The construction of the Aquatop filter, especially the thin quality plastic of the flow control valve, should be taken into consideration when determining the placement of the filter in relation to the aquarium during normal operation. A consequence of the high-quality green hoses included with the Aquatop filter is their thick-walled construction makes them less flexible and heavier than lesser quality vinyl hoses. Add to this the presence of water passing through them, and the hoses become more rigid and even heavier. Notice the angle of the flow valve control intake and return fittings. Their 45-degree orientation is a factor to be taken into account when deciding on the operational placement of the filter, and the length of the hoses leading to the siphon and return tubes placed on the aquarium. The weight of the water-filled hoses connected to the flow control valve may cause long-term damage to the nylon bushings that seal the flow control unit to the filter head. To avoid prolonged pressure on the flow control valve, an attempt should be made to elevate the hoses to the angle of the flow valve control fittings. Suspending the hoses with a hook, or in this instance a piece of PVC pipe wedged between two objects, allows the hoses to connect with minimal pressure on the valve. Although the intake outlet fittings of the flow control valve do swivel, aligning them in a pressure-free position is important. If the filter is placed alongside or under the aquarium, and the siphon and return tubes are hanging on the rear aquarium glass, allow the intake outlet fittings of the flow control valve to point naturally in the direction of the connecting hoses. After settling on an operational location for the filter, and satisfied with the positioning of the input-output fittings of the flow control valve, indicate the location of the UV glass tube on the canister body. The UV glass tube will be under the on-off switch on the filter head. These indicator marks will prove helpful as a guide to the orientation of the holes in the media trays when creating the tray stack during servicing. Having the filter neatly tucked away out of sight in a cabinet under the aquarium does have its drawbacks. When needing to service, removing and returning the heavy filter inside the cabinet will make you wish it had a couple of handles. Fortunately, this only occurs once or twice a year. A closed filtration system operates by drawing water from a source, passing it through cleaning material, and then returning it to the source. Some closed filtration systems, such as a swimming pool filter, use a separate pump to draw the water from the pool and push it through the filter back to the pool. The Aquatop canister filter utilizes the laws of gravity to feed the water from a source, the aquarium, and then the filter's built-in motor draws the water through the filter and back to the aquarium. This is the reason the filter is positioned below the aquarium. The intake of water is achieved by using a siphon tube inserted into the aquarium below the waterline. Normally, a strainer is attached to the tube to prevent large debris or small fish from being drawn into the filter. The output of filtered water is returned to the aquarium and discharged through a return tube normally located just below the waterline. With this simple configuration, both tubes submerged below the waterline and secure airtight, watertight connections of the hoses to the tubes as well as the flow control valve on the filter head Should the filter stop operating, all water trapped inside the tubes, hoses, and filter should remain stationary. Resumption of the filter will produce uninterrupted water flow. In a closed filtration system, leaks on the intake or suction side appear as air bubbles in the aquarium. Leaks on the return or pressure side appear as puddles on the floor. The appearance of fine air bubbles emanating from the filter normally originate from one or more of these locations. If you are using the plastic hose locking nuts that came with the Aquatop filter to secure the hose to the siphon tube, as well as to the intake fitting on the flow control valve, more than likely either or both of these two connection points are the source of the problem. Since the siphon tube is made of rather thin plastic, check for pinholes or cracks at any location above the waterline. If you are satisfied that the hose connections are sound and that the siphon tube shows no holes or cracks, another source of an air leak may be a damaged or improperly seated O-ring on the filter head. Proper care and inspection of this O-ring is necessary to provide an airtight, watertight seal between the filter head and the canister body. Keeping in mind the old adage, the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line, the presence of an exceedingly long hose connecting the siphon tube to the inlet fitting on the flow control valve has a tendency to promote the formation of air bubbles. The longer hose slows down the water flow from the aquarium and air accumulates in the loop at the bottom of the long hose. Trimming the length of the siphon hose will help increase the flow of water from the aquarium to the filter, deterring the possibility of unwanted air buildup. There is also a benefit to having a slack-free hose between the return tube and filter. A taut hose will improve the return flow to the aquarium, which also aids in promoting more rapid draining from the siphon tube. A short hose on the return line is less critical since the water passing through the hose is forced by the pressure of the filter's motor. In lieu of cutting the hose, removing the slack may be accomplished by positioning the siphon and return tubes on opposite ends of the aquarium. This encourages good water circulation and reduces dead spots. By locating the strainer at the end of the siphon tube, below the lowest water line when doing a water change, allows the filter to be continually run during the water change process. If you choose to implement this position, make sure all sections of pipe used to assemble the siphon tube are securely attached to each other. Any gaps in the interlocking pipes will encourage the intake of air when the water level is reduced and the pipe is exposed.